Hello there, Dr. Boss. In today's episode, we have an amazing guest, Dr. Peter Kim, who I've actually met, not even in person, but online, actually during COVID. And we invited him here because he has accomplished so much and wanted to discuss with him on his journey. So, welcome, Peter.
Thanks so much for having me. This will be a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, Peter's an anesthesiologist and he is the founder of Passive Income MD. And we're going to talk about that a little bit. So, what was the moment when you realized that clinical income alone, Peter, wasn't going to give you the freedom that you wanted, that you think you maybe were thinking about creating Passive Income MD?
Well, I think we all have this idea, all of us going through medicine, that once you become an attending, you slave away for all those years and you get to that place, like you're just going to be set. And that was my goal. I mean, my goal was just to get through my training, get a good job, and that was going to be it. And that was my whole plan all along. And then what happened was that I became a junior attending. And as many people know, you got to kind of put in your time for a couple of years before you become a partner. And so you put in more time, right? You put in more time. I was working nights and weekends, a ton, holidays, everything. And then about the 2-year mark, when I was supposed to turn partner, I expected all of these things to change. In fact, that's what was promised to me, at least verbally. And then so I hit that stage and I'm like, all right, where is it? And what happened is that they told me at this point, well, it's not going to be exactly like we told you. We had to make some adjustments. We had some changes. And so not much is going to change. And so I remember sitting there at that point, like my whole world kind of unraveled a little bit because I expected when I hit partner, income was going to be where I wanted to be. I was going to have the schedule that I wanted, all of that stuff, and none of it happened. And so honestly, I felt a little, I don't know what you want to call it. I don't know if betrayed is the right word, but I just felt like the rug was pulled out under me. And this whole kind of notion that, hey, I'm going to be set when I get to this stage, that all changed for me. And so it kind of scared me. And I didn't really know what to do about it. And when you're in that position, especially medicine, you don't know how to negotiate. You don't know whether you have leverage. You don't know any of this stuff. And so I was like, okay, I got to figure something else out. I don't know what that is, but I got to figure something else out. Do I change jobs? Do I do something else? So I just started talking to a lot of other doctors like, hey, what would you do? What would you do? What have you done? And the people that I really sought out were people like you guys, people who seem to have it all figured out, right? And I would just feel like, hey, how come you live pretty well? You seem pretty happy. You travel a lot. You do all this stuff. I see them on the social media stuff. And they were like, well, I create other income and that allows me to kind of control my time a little bit better in medicine. And it just turned out that a lot of them were doing real estate. And so that's why I decided to dive into that. And
yeah, but what made you decide, okay, well, I'm working toward partnership track. And then they say that, why couldn't you just say, okay, well, I'll just follow along. I'll just stay on and until I earn that. What made you decide, I need to explore another opportunity? What was that moment with the light bulb that you said?
I was actually pretty angry first.
Yeah.
I mean, to be honest, it wasn't like this, like amazing. Oh, it was like literally I was angry first. Actually, funny story was that I remember telling my wife, I wake up in the mornings, I'm like, oh my, I feel so like my jaws hurt. And she was like, oh my, you must be so stressed. You're so angry and upset. And it turned out that week, right after all that happened, I was just clenching so much at night. And I think it was because I was just so stressed out about what was I going to do? I didn't know what to do. And I remember at that point thinking, this is not good. This is not healthy. And I don't know, just, it was almost like a point of desperation a little bit. I don't know. I'm not one that just sits there and just accepts it necessarily. Like it's a bad situation. I think anybody here who has kind of a little bit of an entrepreneurial mindset or likes to hustle a little bit, you start to say, all right, well, what else can I do? How can I fix the problem? And again, I think I pride myself on being a pretty good problem solver in some ways. I might not be right all the time, but I'll do something. And so I was like, okay, I'm just going to try to figure out something. I don't know what it is, but that's when I went and started talking to people.
Gotcha. So the next question is like, most of us are taught trade time for money. The only way you can make money is in the clinic seeing patient or you in the OR doing anesthesia, or I think you were doing OBGYN. I mean, you were doing OB
anesthesia is what I was doing.
Yeah. I mean, that's not a good call schedule either as well. So what mind shift had to happen before you could see yourself getting into real estate and as an entrepreneur?
Well, it was around that time. Again, I don't remember the exact moment, but it was around that time where I started reading probably the book that launched thousands of real estate careers. And that was the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And that was when I was just like trying to figure something out. Maybe I think one of them recommended I read that book. And the book is an easy read. We don't even know if it's really true or not for a lot of people, but it's more like a story. It's almost like a fable in a way. It's the way I treat it. But it kind of talked about that concept of one father who was a good career person, worked for their time, money until they retired, and they worked for that, but didn't have much control of their time and never really built really significant wealth. And wealth meant freedom and time. And then there's the other dad, which was apparently the author's kind of friend's dad, who he modeled. And that person started to figure out how to not to trade time for money, how to leverage their skills, their capital, their time, their energy to create passive income and just a different life. And it just gave you the contrast between what kind of life you'd want. And of course, when you read something like that, nobody chooses the slave away until you're 65. Your time is somebody else's, under someone else's control. When you read something like that, you're like, oh, definitely, I want that other thing. And so I remember looking at that point, I started thinking about my own life, and my father-in-law, he was a physician. Oh, he's still practicing physician. My father is a surgeon and he's not practicing anymore. And I remember looking at both their lives, and I felt like I had a rich dad and a poor dad in my life. Poor dad was my dad, and the rich dad was my wife's dad. I remember my father, like at one point in his career, like the hospital kind of cut him off, the referral patterns to him, and he was really stressed. He had to get another job somewhere. And of course, he felt like he had to continue working late into his career to make sure he had enough money to retire. Was again working really, really hard as a surgeon. And then my father-in-law, I got to see him, and he kind of shared stories, and he had invested in real estate early. And he told me basically in his early 50s, maybe even around 50 years old, he actually had the option to quit medicine if he wanted, because he had already created enough income from his real estate holdings. It was really slow, steady, nothing too risky, not trying to get rich quick, and just slowly, consistently investing. And the funny thing is, he still practices today. That's what's really funny. Because again, he's like, what else would I do in my life? I would get so bored. And so he definitely practices that whole where he practices medicine because he gets to do it, because he wants to do it, versus having to do it. And like, so that whole reading that book, seeing that example of myself in my real life, that's what really shifted things, at least from a mindset perspective.
Yeah, you started with, if I remember, a blog. You started a blog called Passive Income MD. Why did you start the blog? And most people they invest quietly, but you decided to kind of discuss what you're doing. What led to that?
Yeah. Actually, what happened was that I'm definitely one of those guys that if you hear about something, you get excited about it, you just want to share it with your friends. And whether that's like, I don't know, whether there's a certain music artist or a movie or something, I'm usually the first ones like watching it, telling people about it. You got to watch this TV show, whatever it is. And at that time, when I started learning about real estate, I got really excited. And when I started investing, I got even more excited because you start seeing the checks come in. And so then I just started telling all my friends, like I'm talking about other people in the hospital. And as an anesthesiologist, I come into contact with a lot of other physicians, and there were a lot around my age. And we just started talking, what are you doing? This or that. And I was like telling them, I was like, oh, you got to look into this stuff. Like I've talked to this doctor, and that's why he's been able to live the life he wants. And so look into all this stuff. And I started just explaining, and a lot of them, I mean, even sometimes in the OR talking about it. And people were like, oh, I don't have time right now for this, but maybe if you should start a blog, you write it on there, I'll read it, because nobody's talking about this. And I remember that time thinking, oh, I'm not a writer. I've never written a blog before. I don't even like being on social media that much, to be honest with you. And so I was like, maybe. And so I thought about it. And the funny thing was, I sat to myself and I said, look, if I were going to do a blog, what would I want it to be about? And really, it's about creating passive income as a doctor. And so I was like, well, I wonder, Passive Income MD, maybe there's, so I bought the domain name. And then it took me 1 year to write my first blog post. So I sat on it for 1 year.
Hey guys, listen, it took him 1 year to write a blog, okay?
One post.
I'm glad you said that. One blog post.
One blog post.
I bought the domain, and 1 year later, I was like, all right, I'll finally do it. And so I told myself, all right, if I can write 10 blog posts, I'll start it. So I just tried to write 10 articles. I showed my first one to a friend. He's like, this is terrible. So I was like, oh no. And so I had to rewrite it. And that's when I launched it. And of course, I was scared about what people would say, whether people
Mm-hmm.
would judge me. Because it's one thing to tell your friends, but it's another thing to put it on the internet. When
Right.
you talk about, I don't want to be a slave to this, or I don't want to work, people question your commitment to medicine and at that point and
Mm-hmm.
things like that. So I didn't want that. And so I just did it totally anonymous for a
Right.
while.
Right.
And that's how Passive Income MD, the blog started.
Yeah.
Oh,
How
so you
long did
wrote
it
it
take?
anonymous.
Yeah.
You
How
didn't put
long
your name.
did we find it was from Peter Kim? It was like a year or two later, or?
Yeah. It was again, probably about a year later. I wrote anonymously, and for some reason, I guess I got really lucky. It just started catching on, and readership started going up. I started getting emails. I started getting a good number of emails, which was like, hey, I want this too. I want to learn what resources, all of this
Mm.
stuff. But I was always answering anonymously. So it was kind of weird. I felt a little strange. And I felt it was a little bit weird one time when somebody was like, hey, I'm about to invest like $25,000 into this thing. Like, should I do it?
Mm.
And I was like, you're writing to like an anonymous person online about
Right.
whether you should invest this
Right.
money. And I remember thinking, that's really strange. And I felt really bad. And I was like, all right, well, so I was scared to get on the phone because I don't want people to know who I am. And so for a while, I was like, okay, if I really want to grow this and build this, and I got this recommendation from a friend who had started a brand, was like, you need to just come out of the closet, right? And let people know who you are. And I remember being really scared at that moment of doing that. Again, I thought about it for a while. What are people going to say? My partner's going to say something, this or that. And then I did it. I wrote this blog post like, will the real passive income MD please stand up, or something like that, right? Or something like that, like Eminem song, right? And I put it out there, and nobody said anything. like nobody cared. I mean, I was really scared. Like I was going to get called in nothing. And so from then on, I was able to feel free that I could share these things with people, connect with people, which is really what I really like doing, was connecting with people and communities and building communities and things like that. So I was able to do that by coming out of the closets, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, but the question that I want to ask you is like, how did you overcome the fear of judgment by your peers? Because you're a doctor. What the heck are you talking about real estate? We don't go to school for real estate. We're not financial planners and so forth. I mean, for me, I was like, I like to stick in my lane of expertise, which is clinical, but anything outside of that, I'm uncomfortable. So how did you kind of get out of that fear of being judged, particularly talking about something that you didn't go to 12 years of school for?
Well, I mean, I still deal with that all the time. I think we all deal with it. I mean, you've built expertise. Mike's built expertise. You've written a book there. I can see, nice title there. So you guys have done stuff. And oftentimes we're always trying different things and new things. And of course, there's a little bit of fear. If I'm completely honest with you, anytime I try something new, there's always a little bit of fear of, I don't know, some people call it imposter syndrome. Maybe that's
Mhm.
used too much these days, or just being a fear of like, hey, am I going to be exposed for not knowing everything? And I think as a doctor, we're so used to, we work our way through the system, and you're not supposed to know anything, and you get trained. And about some point, yeah, you're trained, and then when you're like kind of let go. But if you think about all of us, when we first started practice, it's not like we knew everything
Mm.
right off the bat. Like we still had to fumble around. I mean, especially when your first patient sees you and your first time you're attending, it's a little bit of weird. Like you always wonder whether they'll say like, well, so how long you've been attending? Sometimes you're like, well, it's my first week. And so I had to get over a lot of that stuff too, for sure, when it came to building a brand, building businesses, talking about real estate and things like that. But again, I don't know if there's one thing that helps you get over it. I think more of it's a decision of like what's more important or not. I think for me, it was like,
Mm.
hey, it's more important for me to share this. And I actually
Mm.
came about at it from not from I know everything. And I think that's what helped me too. It's not like I came at it from like, let me tell you what the truth is. I
Mm.
came from it more like, hey, this is what I'm learning, and I just want to share it with you. And from
Mm.
that perspective, and it left room for me to have some humility. And if somebody said, well, I don't agree with that, or I think, I could easily say, oh, okay, maybe in that.
Mm.
And I don't have to like defend myself or this or that. It's more like, hey, this is what I'm learning, and this is what I'm sharing with you as I go. And actually, in the first blogs, that's what I pretty much did more of that. And I used to even show like a progress meter of like how my passive income is growing. It was one of more
Mm.
of those kind of blogs initially. And that allowed me to kind of move into it without having to feel like I am the world's authority on whatever that thing is. And it allowed me to kind of just, again, get into it and just have fun with it. And again, the more you do it, let's be honest, the more you do these things, the more you push yourself, the more you try things you're scared about, the easier it gets.
Absolutely. And I love what you said is that you share your journey with you because no one can dispute your perception, your journey, because that's you. No one can come and say, oh, no, you didn't feel that way. You didn't learn that, right? So it's an honest and it's an honest, but yet revealing journey. And I like to encourage doctor to do that is to share your journey, what you're discovering and how you're feeling, because that in itself is terrific as well. So follow-up question to what do you think hold doctors back from putting themselves out there? I mean, you obviously, you said, well, you take one step at a time and you do it for a purpose because you want to share. But we see, I mean, that's the small percentage. We see a lot of doctors, they just have the fear of holding themselves back. What do you think that is?
Why do doctors not put themselves out there more, you mean, in
Mhm.
terms of like building brands and things like
Yeah.
that? Of
Yeah.
course. I mean, it's always the same thing. It's always fear. I mean, whether you want to name it as fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of, again, being exposed or being an imposter,
Fear of
fear of being
success, I
liked.
think. Yeah.
Oh, you think fear of success? Maybe. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
fear of
because
success.
I'll do this blog and millions of people will find me, and then what will my patients think?
Well, there's that side too. Like,
Yeah.
what's our actually? I wondered if like if a patient saw that, would they take me seriously as a doctor?
Right.
You ever felt that too? And so I worried about that. Of course, now, especially on social media, like actually people like that. They really love it. They really love when the doctors out there. I mean, some of the most popular doctors that people go see are the ones that are even being silly on social media. Like there's a couple ones that I watch that they just do the funniest things and people want to go see them because I think they think they're real. They know they're real and they're real people. And so I think a lot of people have to get over that, especially in medicine, because especially as a physician, as doctor, you want to keep that a little bit of the separation of like, hey, I need to be respected. I don't want to be shown to have some cracks because then I'll lose credibility, I'll lose trust. And as a physician, that matters a lot. But I think when it comes to building your brand and when it comes to your business, like that, you can't bring that same fear into that. Otherwise, you won't try things, you won't do things. And a lot of physicians, that's what ends up happening for a lot of them, unfortunately, where they don't try to do something or they try something a little bit. Oh, it wasn't, I didn't get the response I wanted. Oh, see, I told you, I tried. And they do that all the time. And
All
that
the
keeps
time.
them from building whatever they build. I mean, like you, I mean, again, the subject matter you talk about a lot is not always necessarily the easiest, right? To talk about online, but you do it and you're so good at it. And probably the first, I don't know, for you, maybe there was some being uncomfortable in the beginning, but the more you do it, you realize that's who you are and that's what your level of expertise, and you get better and better as you do it. And so, again, for a lot of physicians, I just tell people like, if you're ever going to, just for anything in life, what do they say? Like, if you ever want to get anywhere, like fear is always going to be in the way, right? It's always on the other side of fear. And so the more you do it, the better you get at it. I still feel it once in a while, of course, but also I've seen in my life how it's completely changed my trajectory when I just kind of say, hey, let's just do it anyways.
I definitely identify with that. I mean, I operate like today. I made several executive decisions. That was I fearful? Yeah. Is it going to work? Maybe, maybe not. But it was the financial risk as well as the business. I like even now, like you said, we still, even though we're entrepreneurs and we have passive income, we're still feeling the sense of fear. But yet we take the initiative and then learn from the experience as well too. So when you were building passive income, were you thinking about building a brand as a business, or did you realize that at all?
None of this was super intentional. I didn't really have a roadmap from the beginning. I
Mm.
just was trying to start a blog and I didn't even really even know blogs could make money. I didn't really expect it to have a business. I knew though when I had potential, when I started the blog, it started taking off. And then I got an email from a sponsor, a
Hmm.
potential sponsor. I don't remember. I think it was disability insurance or life insurance or something like that. I don't know. They had seen my blog and they sent me an email saying, hey, love the blog, fan of what you're doing, would love to consider being a sponsor. Can you send me your media kit? And I remember looking at that going,
Yeah.
what is a media
What's a
kit?
media kit?
What's a media kit? What is he talking about? How do I get paid on whatever? And so I started Googling. I wish we had AI back then. It would have been a lot
Hmm.
easier. But I was Googling everything. How do you make money? What do you do? I started looking at other people's research. I created this media kit. I don't even know where I came up with prices. I just made it up. And then I sent it off and they're like, sure. And so I got my first check and I was like, wow, this can be something. And again, I didn't expect it to be what it is today, but I thought it'd be a little bit of side hustle money. I thought it'd be fun doing something I'm passionate about. And then one thing led to next. And I think it really came from like asking people what do you need next? Like I started with a blog. I kind of asked them like, hey, what else would you like? Some people are like, I don't want to read a blog. I want to listen to it in my car. So I want a podcast. Can you make a podcast? So I was like, okay, I'll make a podcast. Never tried that before, but I'll do that. Then I started with a podcast. And then somebody's like, hey, like, do you have a conference? I'm like, no, but I can make one. So started making a conference. Then we started building communities and courses and all of that stuff. And again, all of it was a little bit accidental. It was just basically what people are asking for. And a lot of times that's a pretty good business strategy. If people are asking for it and you build it, that's usually a good thing. Yeah.
Solving what the problems what they have out there, but it's helping part of that journey. I mean, it is true. It's like you go with the flow a lot, which is amazing, and the community that you've built. So I have a question in terms of like helping other doctors, that we're helping doctors build their own brand. And what's one thing that you wish you knew earlier about maybe building an audience of doctors?
Building an audience of doctors. What do I wish I had known earlier? All right. Let's see. I think for doctors, especially, you have to meet them where they are. Doctors are really busy. They're not necessarily like everybody else. And so, in terms of how they like to either consume content, in terms of how they like doing that, like I've done a lot of experimentation with trying to figure out what time. I didn't realize this. Like they'll show up at this time, but you won't show up at this time. I mean, if you see in the entrepreneurial world, like they do stuff all throughout the day. Like at 1:00, let's do this webinar or meeting or whatever. Dude, there's doctors don't have time for all that. And so I tried some of those things early on, like this or that, when times that made sense. But then I started figuring out, okay, actually started talking to us like, actually, when are you free? When can you connect? What ways do you like to consume content? What do you like to do? And I spent more time then discovering what people needed, whatever people wanted. And then I built that. It took me a while to get to that, but that's one thing I really have learned over time. Like I try to, if you can game the system, you can game the system by finding out what they need or want first, and then just building that instead of trying to give them what you think they need. And then not being, and then you start figuring out, oh, that didn't work. Let me not spend their time. I've done all sorts of, I'm always trying different things and put our communities on certain platforms, and nobody uses that platform, even though I think it looks cool. It looks slick. Nobody comes over to that platform. So we had to scrap it and do something else. Whereas instead of just going to where people are.
That's so true. And trying to anticipate what they actually want, and you think it's perfect, and then you get crickets. Can be humbling.
Where'd you learn that lesson? Because that makes sense when you say it, but oftentimes it's not intuitive. Because I often run into doctors and say, oh, I'm going to build this software. That's going to build a directory and so forth. And they're now having a problem marketing it because they have to convince people that they need this software. So the easier way to sell things is to sell something that people already are asking for, people already want, instead of trying to convince people this product is good. But where did that come from?
Well, I'm trying to remember where exactly that came from, but I did read, why am I forgetting the name of the book right now? But the author is Mike Michalowicz. If you ever look at him, he's got a whole bunch of different books on entrepreneurship. Okay. His name is Mike Michalowicz, really funny guy on YouTube, but he has incredible books there. I just remember a story. You remember stories really well. He told this story of where he was building, I think it was some software, and he would ask his friends, like, hey, did you buy this? Like, would this be good? And he even asked a whole bunch of people. They're like, oh, it's a great idea. Awesome. And then he built it. And when he went to actually sell it, they're all like, nah, I don't want to put any money for it. And so what he said was that what he learned from that oftentimes is that everybody will tell you it's a good idea. Everyone will say, oh, that's awesome. That's great. But the real true test of knowing whether it's going to be good for somebody or something is when they actually put down money. And so that fit that whole concept. And I know Mike does this sometimes, and he's done this before. Sometimes you actually sell it before you build it. And that way you can almost test the concept first. And I've done that with a lot of different communities, products, things like that, where like you have a small beta group. Hey, I'm building this thing, or I'm going to have this thing. I'm going to have you sign up for now, and I will deliver it here. And that's how you know it's almost like a proof of concept, because if nobody's going to pay for it, then you don't need to build it. And so I've done that with certain courses. I've done that with even communities. I've done that with that stuff. And that's where I kind of learned that whole concept of like, make sure you build what people are actually willing to pay you for, not just by lip service, just saying, hey, that sounds awesome.
So if a doctor come to you today saying, I want a second stream of income, I don't really want to be a landlord, or I'm not that crazy about social media, what would you tell them?
You don't have to do that. I mean, there's so many different ways. What I've having these communities of physicians that are entrepreneurial minded and all this stuff, like we have hundreds of people in these communities. There's so many different ways to do it. And before, I always thought everybody needs to go down the real estate road. You have to do this. This fits for most people. But then being in these communities, I mean, there are people building different platforms online. There are people doing real estate. There are people doing telemedicine or being really creative and being owners there of the practices. You just find that there are so many different ways to create the life you want. There's not just one vehicle. You have to figure out what works for you in terms of your time, energy, how much money you want to spend on it. And so I don't start from, hey, you have to do this. If they say, I don't want to do social media, you say, okay, well, what do you want to do? Well, what do you want to do? Like, what do you want to build? What excites you? What will get, because a lot of this stuff, as you know, entrepreneurship, it's like, you got to be pulled to it. Like you can say like, I'm going to do it, but you'll give up really quickly. I mean, how many people that started back when I started my blog, I guess I was one of the early ones, but there was an explosion of physician finance blogs right after. I remember that. There were so many that people talked about even just having their own little mini conference of physician finance blogs. We go to some of these financial conferences and there'd be a whole group of physician finance bloggers. I would say 95% of them within a year had already quit. Because it's just, like I said, it's easy to get started. I think they all felt like they should do it, but none of them really feel pulled, like really like, I'm going to stick with this because this is something I'm truly passionate about or that I want to keep doing. And so, especially in entrepreneurship, let's be honest with you, sometimes it can be a grind. In the beginning, it's exciting. Then there's a phase where it's a grind and you got to push through that. And so if somebody doesn't want to do it, I don't try to force them into it. I don't say you have to do it this way. We find, okay, well, what do you want to do? What are you passionate about? What would excite you? At the same time, you also want to make sure it's a viable business. You want to make sure it's sustainable for the time and energy, but you try to marry those things together. And then that's what helps in terms of advice. That's where I go to. Because again, if they want to go this way, there's so many people doing different things. And like, they're so creative. If you can be creative, you can be resourceful, you can figure something out.
Yeah, and I think there's a lesson to be learned there too. It is like you said, 95% of them started and ended their financial physician aspirations on there, but it's just about being consistent. Having a podcast, like I've done a podcast for a long time. You've done a podcast for a long time. You're still doing blogs. When I told you, Peter, blogs don't make any more money on there. What you have done, which has been amazing, is build this entire community where we can actively talk about this stuff. As someone you called me the elder statesman on there.
I think the OG was the better term.
The OG. We weren't able to talk about any of this stuff. We couldn't talk about doing anything other than writing prescriptions, and talking about other forms of income was essentially taboo. So I want to commend you on giving us this opportunity to discuss this, and I want to congratulate you on your success with building a community. So I'm going to ask for those watching now, or maybe they're listening to us, and maybe they're burnt out, and maybe they're kept on their clinical income, but they want ready to build something of their own. What would be the first step to maybe get started on building a passive income stream? What would you recommend for them?
I do think it's you got to surround yourself with the right people, no matter where you go. I feel like that is the first step, because you start. Let's say you're in your own world right now, whether you're watching this from the hospital, whatever it is, or on your ride home, or you're watching this at home. Oftentimes, like if you're around in a community of people who are just doing one thing one way, naturally you're going to go that way too. And you're going to really doubt whether something else is possible. But when you're around other people that are starting businesses, learning to be consulting, they're becoming advisors to health tech startups, they're starting telemedicine, or they're building their own brands, or starting an AI company, all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, I could do that too. And ideas start to flow. So that's one of the first things I would tell people to do is get in different rooms. Get in rooms with people that you start to rub shoulders with, people who are doing things differently, and it'll start to expand and open your perspective to what's going on. And I think that's an easy first step for people. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to read anything. Just find people to spend time with, whether that's virtually, which we have a lot of really cool virtual communities today. You can, again, there are a lot of in-person events too.
Well-
yeah. Tell us about Passive Income MD. Our listeners can find out more about your community.
We have a couple different communities based on, again, these were built out of needs for people. We have something for anybody that's like a physician entrepreneur or wants to be or starting to build something, or again, even shape their life in medicine a little bit differently, whether they're even changing their practice model or thinking about trying different things, or again, investing in real estate. We have this awesome community called the Leverage and Growth Accelerator. I will say Mike was one of my inspirations as I built this. Hundreds of physicians in there just talking about everything from investing to medicine to AI to homeschooling to traveling. But it's just, again, a group of physicians who are thinking differently about how they want to live their ideal lives. Mike and I have also done some similar things together. We work together a lot. We built these, again, for high-level people who want to really accelerate really quickly. We built different masterminds. We have something called Momentum MD, where a lot of physicians get together. We get together a couple times a year, but we meet monthly just to help people really strategize where they want to be in life. And we make sure that we accelerate and we get them there. So we have those type of communities. And then, of course, if you want to be in person, you want to rub shoulders with people that are talking about this and get excited. We've got a conference that we put on every year. This year, it's in September. It's going to be in Dallas. It's called PIMD Con. You can go to that website. We'd love to see you there. Hundreds of physicians talking about different things, real estate, entrepreneurship, different practice models, AI, a lot of fun things. And again, you just get to hear and connections.
I'm a member of your LGA, and I think I've been a member for a while now. So I always find that very productive as well, too. So any last word, Peter, before we end this for the doctors listening, and how they can take that initial step to follow their passion, whether it's entrepreneurship, real estate, building an online community, or leveraging their medical expertise online, which is my passion. It's helping doctors to leverage their medical expertise online and lean heavily into their clinical side to serve to the millions and thousands. It's the journey that my personal journey that I discovered to going on YouTube from COVID because I couldn't see patients. And it's like my journey is very similar to yours because I was forced to do it because of COVID. And you went into your journey because the partnership track derailed. And I'm sure Mike was similar as well. And so each of us have our own, I guess they call an incident that pushed us to that level. So before we end this, it's like any last word to our listeners?
Well, I think for a lot of people, when they see people who have been, I guess they're at a certain stage, maybe they're successful, it feels intimidating for them. Like, oh, I could never do that, or it takes me forever that. But again, everyone started somewhere. And so what I tell people is, yeah, of course, start dreaming. And you should have that dream of, I want to build this. But sometimes, again, it feels so far away that you never really get started. And so what I've really focused on in trying to help people do and trying to help motivate people, I guess, in a way, or help encourage people to do is, what's the very first step that helps you on that journey? For example, I remember hearing about this, James Clear, right? Atomic Habits. He wrote that book. I think it was in that book where he talked about, like, a lot of people have this goal. I want to run every day, or I want to go running or whatever. But it feels like, oh my God, I got to get up and I got to do all this stuff and I got to get running. But if you make the step and the goal, like, hey, I'm just going to put on my shoes. I'm going to just put on my running shoes. That's it. That's my goal. People will say, once you put on your running shoes, you're going out the door and you're going running. And so what I've learned to do for people, and I say, it's like, okay, so what is your running shoes? Like, what is that very first step you can take right now and immediately that will help kind of you to lead to the next one? Maybe it's a phone call you need to make. Maybe it's an email you need to write. Maybe, again, it's going to a certain conference or event, or even listening to a YouTube channel, right? Or watching a YouTube channel. Like, what is the very first immediate step that you can do and that will help start things down the road? So what is that one step? Whatever that is for you, whoever's listening to this or watching this, I encourage you to take that and do that within the next week. That's it. Set a goal for yourself. You're not going to be all the way there in one go. It's not going to happen super quickly, but you can do that one step in the next week. And so that'd be my encouragement.
Put on your shoes and then take that next step. Put on your shoes. So having said that, Mike and I thank you for taking the time to be here with us and share your wisdom. There is a lot of pearls that was given in this episode, guys. I think you guys need to listen to it again and really let it soak in, because Peter has built probably a decade of of experience in what he just said there, because you really can shortcut your journey to success if you really learn from the people that had done that, because they will save you the mistake that they made, and surround yourself in the right environment, such as LGA and your conference, as well as Momentum. All right.
Awesome. Thanks so much,
Well,
guys.
thank you,
Appreciate
Peter.
it.
Thank you so much. See you guys at PMDCon. Go to pimdcon.com to find out more. Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys.